seminar sponsored by the IBM Southeast Employees Federal Credit Union. This is Section 3 of the Building a Better Budget seminar, where we actually get into what is the budget. So now we're really able to develop what our budget is going to consist of. And again, you can use either a paper form or a spreadsheet form, whatever you're comfortable with, to actually construct your budget. But the main three components that you're going to need to record while you're building your budget have to do with your income, expenses, and what are some of the action items that you need to accomplish. So let's go ahead and start discussing each one of these in particular. First of all, income. Well, when we talk about income, it's very important for you to use your income wisely. And we start this discussion by talking about what's the difference between your gross income and your net income. When you think about that, your gross income is obviously what your hourly rate is, or what your salary rate is. The net income is then normally what we end up seeing in our accounts that's deposited or the paychecks that we actually get. So the difference between those two ends up being our withholding. And a lot of times we may think that we don't have control over what the withholding is, but you know, we all at the end of the year either love tax time or we hate it. If we love it, it means that we're getting back a nice income tax return. If we hate it, it normally means we're paying. Either way, it means that there's an opportunity for improvement there. If you're getting a refund, it's not necessarily a good thing, because if you think about it, what you've done is you've given the government an interest-free loan for the past year. Money that you could have been using to either save, pay down debt, or establish an emergency fund. And then if you calculate the positive impact of interest or the negative impact of finance charges on those amounts we either could have been saving or paying off, the whole picture looks even entirely different. We actually looked at a statistic recently that said over 70% of the population receives an income tax refund. So if you are one of those people, you are in the majority. And the average refund is about $2,700, which equates to around $225 a month. So if you're paying, it again means that you don't have the right number of withholding. So what do you do in the event that you are getting too high of an income tax return back at the end of the year, or you're having to pay? You simply go to the irs.gov website and you pull down the W-4. Now your HR department may also have a supply of these. What you can simply do is go ahead and calculate what you think is going to be your best withholding. And again, if you go to the irs.gov website, they can help you through this process because they actually have calculators on there to help you get a better understanding of maybe what would be the best withholding for you. When you're estimating your income for your budget, you always want to be conservative. What do we mean by conservative? Basically, you want to look at your non-guaranteed income and your fluctuating income and look at those differently. So your non-guaranteed income is things such as overtime and bonuses. In the event you are one of those employees who is able to work overtime on a regular basis, you may not want to include it unless it's guaranteed that you will always have overtime. The same thing with the bonus, and there are very few scenarios where bonuses end up being really guaranteed. So you definitely want to be, in most cases, just calculating your income based off of what your salary or hourly amounts are going to be. You may also be one of those people that receives fluctuating income. Perhaps you have commissions that are incentives for you for doing your job well. Maybe you even have a seasonal job where your work fluctuates. You may even be self-employed where you don't make the same amount every month. So what do you do in those cases? Well, for fluctuating income, we encourage you to actually go ahead and use your prior year's income and adjust it for this year's income so you can get a better understanding of what your true income is for the year. To go ahead and help you capture this, we've actually created a monthly income chart for you as well. This is on page 7 of your workbook. If you go ahead and turn to page 7, you'll see that we have included a monthly income chart that allows for you to capture both the gross and net for different income sources that you have within your household. It is very important, again, that you get all working members of the household involved in this process. This will help get a better picture of what the income flow is into your household. This ends up being homework assignment number 3 for you. Next on the portion of your budget that we're constructing comes expenses. So we've talked about the income. Now let's talk about what are some of the items that you're having to pay for on a monthly basis. Basically, what you're going to want to do on your expenses is you're actually going to have a chart that we're going to review here in a bit. You're going to see that you have 2 columns to work with. One for what you've been spending your money on, and the other for your proposed spending. What you need to do is evaluate your cash flow. You're basically going to calculate all of your expenses and subtract the sum from your current income on your monthly income chart. Evaluate whether you're over or under. Many a times you may find that you're actually under. And what this simply means is that you are charging what you can't afford to pay with cash, with the income that's coming into your household. So this realization may be the exact thing that you need to actually start your budget. You definitely want to make sure that you include all of your expenses when you're going through your monthly expenses. You know, a lot of times you can end up having a occurrence that you've forgotten about, or you end up having something that you've forgotten about, something as simple as maybe a veterinary bill that arises that you didn't think about. And so sometimes our budget can get off track because of those small things. You're also going to need to look at whether your expenses are essential or whether they're discretionary. When we look at the essential side, again, essential living expenses end up being items that would cause you financial hardship or psychological hardship in the event that you didn't have them. Things related to your home, your mortgage, things of that sort. A lot of times when we look at those, we see that they fall into 2 categories. One of them being that they're the same amount every month. Things like your mortgage, your car payments, those things don't tend to change. But you may also notice that on things like your utility bill, maybe you even have a cell phone bill that fluctuates and is variable. And you need to pay attention to those. So if you do have some variable items that are on your expenses, simply kind of take an average of what it costs you for a year, divide that amount by 12, and that will give you what to include as the monthly expense line item for that utility bill or that phone bill. Again, some of these discretionary expenses are going to be items that you're going to see that you can actually live without. And you may also be able to maybe even reduce some of your discretionary expenses. Something as simple as cable, maybe something that you can maybe reduce a package. Maybe you're currently subscribing to all of the movie channels with your cable package. Maybe you're not home a lot, and you may be able to go ahead and reduce that to a basic package and save, you know, anywhere from $20 to $50, even more. Regardless, you'll want to go ahead and see how many items you can actually reduce your expenses on. So it's good to have both the current and proposed column filled in on as many of the expenses as possible. Also, don't forget that you want to include an emergency fund as an expense, as well as a savings plan as an expense. They are now vital portions of your budget. And again, you want to go ahead and do a pay yourself just as you would a regular bill. So you'll see that down at the bottom of the chart that there are goals listed there. And so include that as one of your goals. That monthly expense chart that we've been talking about completing is actually on page 8. To help you kind of get a feeling for what the average household spends on which areas of essential living expenses, we contacted the American Consumer Credit Counseling Agency. They provide this information to help people get a better understanding of what, on average, Americans end up spending their money on. And so this breaks down average expenditures into various areas. So you'll see the actual item, housing, utilities, food, and so forth on the left-hand side. The right-hand side ends up being the average amount that the Consumer Credit Counseling Services advises you to have. In the event, let's say, we take housing. Housing is supposed to be anywhere from 20 to 30% of your expenses. You may be one of those people who end up paying 35% of your expenses towards housing. So what does that mean? That means simply that extra 5% has to come from another area. Perhaps you're one of those people who doesn't have a lot of debt. So that extra 5% actually can come off of your debt payment. Perhaps your debt payments only end up being 10% of your expenses. Regardless, this is a great guideline to help you get a feel for what your expenses should be. This concludes Section 3 of the Building a Better Budget seminar.